This should be a fun series. For those that have followed the channel, know that I've built CNC machines and I've modified CNC machines, and I've made some interesting projects over the last 10 years or so with some of those CNC designs. But about 7 years ago, 8 years ago, Shaper Origin came out with their first generation portable CNC machine. And it started out as a Kickstarter project. I was fascinated by it at the time, but it was expensive. It's still expensive. And I wanted them to work the bugs out and see what they could do with it. And then after a number of years, I figured I've got some ideas. So let's pick one of these up. One of the coolest features about the Shaper Origins is you have no size limitations. As much domino tape as you want to put down for the registration for these, you can make anything as big as you want. And there are some videos online of folks making really big things. There have been a few people that have done boat projects. There have been signs that are 10, 12 feet long, and some really neat big pieces of furniture, parametric furniture, all kinds of really, really cool stuff. And that's what was attractive to me. The CNC in the background there is my 6040, and the max bed size that I can use for that as far as cutting space is somewhere around 15 inches by 22 inches. And if you want to do something larger, you have to get into the tiling, make up your own registration pins or points, and break big projects down into smaller segments. And for a lot of signs and things that I've wanted to do and that I have done, it's been a real challenge. So this offers the option to, from a sign standpoint, make really big signs. And I've got a bunch of those on the drawing table too. But for this project, we're going to make a boat with this thing. It is the middle of January, actually right in the middle, January 15th of 2024. And the outside temperature, we've got some snow falling today. Outside it's around 30 degrees. I just came in here and turned on the diesel heater. There's another video for the diesel heater setup somewhere back about a year ago. But right now I just turned this on and we're at 47, 48 degrees. In about 20 or 30 minutes we should be in the 60s, which will make it much more enjoyable out here. For this boat, this is a design that I saw online. There's a gentleman named Paul Fisher, Selway Fisher. I can put a link in the description as far as the plans for this. And I was looking at a lot of small boats, mini boats, something between 7 and 9 feet, because my shop is not real big. And this one was different from some of the other designs that I saw. So this one grabbed my attention. And before making a full-size cut of this, I went ahead and used the Shaper Origin for this model. And we used balsa wood, cut out the panels, and just kind of stitched this together, as this is a stitch and glue boat by design, just so I could get a 3D feel for the way this looks. There is a deck that goes on the top and a cutout. Move this over here a little bit. There's a deck and a cutout, so you can have a couple seats here, and we've got a nice sweep back, and there's an opening here. Obviously I didn't make the deck part. I just wanted to see how the hull came together and how these individual segments worked. One thing I really liked about this design that was different from many of the others that I saw, as well as some that I actually sketched up on my own using FreeShip and DelftShip, which are awesome programs, and I recommend playing around with those if you're into this stuff. But the thing that was different from these plans were it was kind of a hybrid of a skiff, of a multi-chined hull, and sort of displacement, sort of not displacement. So we're kind of straddling those lines between a flat skiff, which will give you more speed, and something that's more displacement oriented. So we're between the two. Pretty simple, 1, 2, 3 pieces. And that's our layout. Obviously these notches are for support beams. Then we'll need our in-wales and out-wales. And for the transom, there's some extra beefing up that is part of the plans as well. Before I cut out those balsa and basswood pieces, this is super easy to do. Just cut these pieces out of paper and tape them up so you can kind of see how these fashion together, at least half of it, one side of it. The first thing I needed to do as far as getting these plans to the point where I could work with these with CNC stuff and with the Shaper Origin was to convert the PDF files into SVG format, because SVGs are the only thing that the Origin goes by, the only thing that it understands. There are lots of options for different software packages that you can use. I did a hybrid of tracing as well as transferring some registration points of these plans into the software I've used for my old standby CNC machines. So I used Vectric, Cut Pro, Cut 2D Pro, and then I was able to manipulate these, keep the sizes consistent, and then save them or export them as SVGs. And then we've got these broken down into 5 sheets in total. Can't quite see it on here, but the first 4 sheets are the individual panels, and then the 5th sheet, which will be made out of a different material, has all the frame members. So these frame members will be thicker than the wood we're going to use for this boat. For our workspace, and again, the shop is not real big in here, but it's certainly big enough for an 8-foot little boat. We're keeping this pretty simple. These are the stands that I used for the mini boat project, the little 6-foot boat, and by comparison, that 6-foot mini boat compared to this, which is almost 8 feet, is pretty significant in a lot of dimensions. Boats in length get bigger in volume as well, so when you go more forward and you stretch it, they go in all different directions, so it's got a much bigger feel when it's done. For our building station here, I've got these just screwed down to the floor here, so that's not going to go anywhere. The nice thing about these stands is they've got the notches, of course, for the 2x4s, so we've got a nice solid base here. That's our sacrificial foam so that we can use the Origin and cut our pieces out. And then this is the wood that we're going to use. Because this is all sort of an experiment, both using the Shaper Origin for something large like this, as well as a set of plans that are new to me and that I haven't found many others who have made similar boats. So this is all kind of testing, and I didn't want to spend a fortune on really good plywood for this because, again, this is just a test. It's going to be all wrapped in epoxy and fiberglass, and we're going to see how this holds up. This is not fancy Akume mahogany or anything that you would spend a fortune on, which would be a good way to go, but because, again, we're testing this, we're keeping this really on a budget. This is Revolutionary Ply from Lowe's, and it's about $25 a sheet. So it's a 0.197, almost 0.2, or rather 5 millimeter thick composite wood of some kind, and it's used pretty much for underlayment. There have been a few folks that have used these for boats, and they've turned out well from what I've seen, and it's not been many. It's just a few of the crazy DIYers that use this for some marine use. It's not guaranteed for marine use, but we're going to use it for marine use and see how this works. Nice and light, nice and bendy, so it should, for the stitch and glue method, bend around pretty well. So for today, what I want to do is start cutting out some of the panels on here and setting them aside, and we'll just nibble away at this over the next month or two. One of the beauties of stitch and glue boat making, and I've made a few of them over the years, is that they do come together pretty quick, and because this is a pretty small boat, it really shouldn't take too long before the hull starts taking shape. And it's just a matter of getting these pieces cut out and then stitching them up. Once we get through all of construction stuff pretty far down the line, then we'll move into the motorization of this. And in some of my other videos, we've done electric conversions and had some fun with an e-propulsion that we stripped down and modified and put a bigger prop on, and there's a bunch of videos on all that stuff too. Because this will be so light, because the boat will be light, and actually lighter than the mini boat a video or two ago, which had a nice wake behind it, I think the speed should be pretty nice. This is a 1,000 watt e-propulsion Spirit 1.0 motor with a torpedo prop on the bottom, and I'm guessing somewhere between 6-7 miles an hour is realistic. I've also got a bigger electric motor that we're going to get into at some point as well. Not that guy. That guy's really big, but something that's bigger than the Spirit and smaller than that one. So let's get the foam on here. Let's get one of these Revolutionary Ply pieces on here, and we're going to put down the domino tape and see if we can cut out a panel or two and go from there. We've got our foam board down and double stuck to the 2x4s underneath of there, and our Revolutionary Ply double-sided taped to the top of the foam. So that's on there. The next thing is to fire up the Shaper Origin, plug in our dust collection port, try to keep the dust under control, load up our files, and get rolling. So, don't know if this will come up or not, but this is our hull shape here, or our very bottom. Then we've got our lower bilges and our upper sides. That's really about it before we get to the frames. And again, those will be out of 1/4 inch regular plywood, and we'll go from there. We've got a little bit of snow flurry action going on and calling for, maybe a couple inches tonight. Good day to be inside where it's nice and warm, working on boat stuff in preparation for warmer days. The central part to using Shaper Origin is this domino tape, and this tells it where it is in the world. So we need to run several strips across here. They don't need to be consistent, they don't need to be in a particular order, but this is what it uses to place itself on your workspace. We've got our tape down, and actually while I'm looking at this and reaching over to the other side, I think this would be a whole lot easier to cut if it were actually just on the floor, because reaching over to the side there is going to be a challenge with some of these larger panels. So I might switch this over onto the floor, but this is basically the way the Origin knows where it is. And I'm not going to go into much detail on the operation of the Shaper Origin. There are lots of videos that go into very good detail explanations on how to use all the features that it has. So this is just kind of an experiment with this project. But I need to think about this. I think I'm going to put this on the floor actually. Yeah, I think on the floor is the way to go with this. It's certainly cooler down there with this cold snap that we're having, but I can lean right on this rather than trying to balance on top of that table. So I've plugged in the shaper, and we need to load in our file and then designate our workspace. And it's kind of interesting also on this, just as far as a side note, I assume there would be an on-off switch for this. There is an on-off switch for the router, which slides in this track here and then moves around based on the steppers and the G-code. So there's the power switch here, there's the speed switch here, and this is basically just a glorified trim router in here. The mechanism for the whole machine, the CNC part, is what makes it kind of unique. But there's no power switch for the actual brains of the operation. You just plug it in like you would a drill or a circular saw, and then it boots and it starts, and then you get to the point where you need to start defining your workspace, which is what we'll do next. And there's our very bottom piece. So this piece is this piece right here, and this is not the full length of the boat. This is just the inside section here, and I think this is, I should put a tape on it, I think it's around 5 feet long at this point. And then with the extra space here, we get up to close to 8. Something I was wondering about with this revolutionary ply, if there were any voids, and I don't see any voids with this. I've looked carefully all the way around, and I'm not seeing any spaces. And so far, I'm impressed with this. Very clean. And cuts very well. I'm pushing it with this end mill. This is an 1/8 inch end mill. And ideally, we should probably do this in 2 passes. But I'm doing it in 1. A little bit of the waviness that we see in the cut here is from my tracing and my transferring of the PDF files to SVGs, because they do match some of my on-screen stuff. But because all this stuff gets sanded and epoxied, and quite honestly, people that make stitch and glue boats cut them with jigsaws and hand tools, so it's not super perfect. But for this little stuff we're goofing around with, I think that looks pretty good. I do need to get a couple of knee pads rather than moving a cushion around. But that's the first piece, and we'll just kind of go from there. So this video is just an overview of the project and using some of this wood, and we'll go from there. Thanks very much for taking a look.